Hello, I'm Katharine Coles. I'm the author of The Stranger I Become on Walking, Looking, and Writing, published by Turtle Point Press and one of the finalists for the Big Other Book Award. I'm going to read a short essay from the book called How Are You Feeling? The first epigraph is from Emily Dickinson, who says, "When I try to organize, my little force explodes." And the second from A.R. Ammons, who says, "Oh yes, yes, the matter goes on, turning into this and that, never the same thing twice. But what about the spirit? How are you feeling?" This morning, when I opened my mouth to answer my husband, nothing came out. How am I feeling? Contagious, dying? I feel fine, only I can't tell you. Don't blame my laryngitis. I can't compose myself. Assembled on the fly, disintegrating, my body, mind rework each other in time. Haphazard, simultaneous, feeling, not feeling, beside themselves, in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts. Notwithstanding that cold fish Wordsworth, a poem isn't emotion, it's words. Do you know feeling when you feel it or when you compose it? A.R. Ammons says his poems arise in response to a more or less recurrent anxiety, under the stress of which he looks for a configuration outside, as in nature, that seems to have in it the capability of meeting the feeling that seems to be released onto what one sees. A distraction, the poem begins not in woe or joy, but in pressure. Poet as overinflated tire. Psst. My husband Chris, a visualization scientist alive in the neural space between his eyes and brain, knows how to fix things. In extremity, he seeks something to repair a marvelous distraction. Between what he knows and what he can fix, his adored mother, dead at 56 of brain cancer. So he builds visualization tools to help surgeons locate and remove tumors and aneurysms. His vision, faltering 25 years later, already expert in seeing, he makes himself an expert in the retina. The macaw he named Merlin at 17, alongside whom he lived for 42 years, who faltered and died over the course of a single day. He orders an autopsy to learn what he should have done. Since when is knowledge power? Every body he's ever loved, mine, his, too late. Dickinson writes, "After great pain, a formal feeling comes. The nerves sit ceremonious like tombs. The stiff heart questions, was it he that bore, and yesterday or centuries before? The feet mechanical go round, of ground or air or aught, a wooden way. Abstraction under pressure, in search of structure, this one radical, its feet, hers, the poems, all embodied. Likewise, I felt it cleaving in my mind, as if my brain had split, names mind and brain as separate. Doing so, it identifies a full body feeling other than or one with the organ in our skulls. The poem refuses to distinguish emotion, sensation, thought. A broken heart, a missed beat, a fracture in time. Not everything is subject to fixing. I take her at her word. Skyping in, I called, "Where's my birdie?" Merlin ran to the screen to dance, chortling madly, looking behind for my entire self, making a call pitched only for me. Where was I? Where was my smell? Given a name by a bird made me someone else. He just got old. His heart failed, as will ours. We buried him under primroses in a box satin-lined to cradle a fancy fifth of whiskey. We kept his longest tail feathers, so he fit. Out of grief disproportionate, we measure graves and bury ourselves. To rise again, some of us make poems, which arrive as feelings, measure, and occasion. If the chameleon poet does no harm from its relish of the dark side any more than from its taste for the bright, because both end in speculation, as they also begin, emotion is incidental until made present. If we believe not one word Keats ever utters can be taken for granted as an opinion growing out of his identical nature, how can his poem arise from feeling? Nursing his brother, Keats rehearsed his own dying. He didn't make poems because he grieved no more than Chris does visualizations. Because he grieved, as we can see in the gap between the early poems and the late, he made himself a poet. The odes enact an effort toward oneness, arising from anxiety, irritable reaching, and ending in evacuation, a release of thought into structure, then through and from it into feeling. Nightingale begins in numbness and ends in disorientation. Melancholy begins in admonition, no, no, then advises. But when the melancholy fit shall fall sudden from heaven like a weeping cloud that fosters the droop-headed flowers all and hides the green hill in an April shroud, then glut thy sorrow on a morning rose, or on the rainbow of the salt sand wave, or on the wealth of globed peonies. On a morning rose? Psst. Don't indulge drear analogies. Go to the rainbow of the salt sand wave, the wealth of globed peonies, lovely configurations outside as in nature, in which feeling not named takes shape. The poem's effectiveness arises precisely out of tension created by the gap between feeling named and enacted, between internal stress and external form. In the rose, he finds a structure and complicates sorrow, constructing it in and through pleasure, dark and lovely, complex, as if emerging from the poem's form. If nothing startles beyond the moment startles. Keats continues, if a sparrow come before my window, I take part in its existence, seeking feeling and finding it in identification, re-embodiment, projection. If the brain as an organ is nerveless, from sense the mind recomposes itself, writing over what the body knows. Chris's eye surgeries and their failures ongoing return in us a lifetime of loss. Parents, siblings, friends, beloved animals who will never return. Longing, we say, Robert Hass reminds us, because desire is full of endless distances. There have been famously blind poets as well as sick ones. Why not? Poetry inhabits the whole body. The world is lovely. Look hard. Close your eyes. For release, I run because I have made myself a runner. Or idle, I check email, Facebook. Though such devices don't transform anxiety, they crank it up. A poem may be a machine, but not the reverse. A machine that's not a poem diverts you from emotion. A poem delivers you to it to you. The failure of artificial intelligence is, Ben Marcus says, that a computer can't distinguish me from my reflection. To a computer, a word means one thing at a time. Human language, strangely mutant, becomes a vehicle for projection. My poem says I am an ice-hearted bitch, which I don't feel until I write it. Then I do. So I am. Cold or hot, as his title implies, in Fire and Ice, Frost writes not out of desire or hate, which he names, but out of internal pressure into structured opposition, in which, for destruction, ice is also great, and would suffice. Cold-eyed, colder-hearted, coldly present to its demands, you don't make a poem while weeping. Compose yourself. The poem composes in itself, in the poet, and in the reader, feeling that lies unknown until encountered and uniquely named. Then mind the gap. The poet's gone, abandoned, beside herself, unmade, just in time. Thank you.